Chris Robertshaw, Douglas East MHK, and we spoke, or you were putting forward an idea about national insurance, and the Treasury Minister, in an interview I did with him, said it was absolute madness what you were proposing.
Yeah, it was an extraordinary interview. If I can just begin at the beginning, I mean, one of the early comments he made is that I was giddy, and I haven't been considered giddy in the last 55 years. I mean, half a century ago is when I was last giddy. His suggestion about being giddy was effectively that somehow I had a knee-jerk reaction to what was happening in the UK during the general election, where the Conservative Party is saying we're going to put up the entry threshold for national insurance payments to protect the lower paid. I think what Alf's forgotten is that I've been quietly and diligently lobbying Treasury now for 3 years to try to get them to understand the unfairness of how we treat our lowest paid people with regard to national insurance contributions.
He also said it would blow a huge hole, though, in the pension pot.
Well, that's a figment of Alf's imagination. I mean, if you look at the extraordinary figment of his imagination, I just think he's posturing, I think, to both frighten the public and frighten Tynwald from looking at this matter, which is not good. The reality is that the Isle of Man workers start paying national insurance earlier than workers in the UK. The consequence of it, which is that, and I'm focused very much, I'm targeting in this ambition to get adjustments to it, focusing on the low paid so that they effectively pay less national insurance. And I mean, I've been talking to Treasury for a number of years about it, and I went back with proposals to avoid the difficulties that they raised. But to suggest that it's going to blow a hole in anything is frankly ludicrous. He's posturing before a debate in Tynwald. I've only taken it to the floor of Tynwald because effectively I failed in my challenges, my rational and reasonable challenges to the Treasury to get something done. So I'm saying now, look, I can't do anything. I can't persuade Treasury to look at the unfairness of this. So I'm effectively, in this month's Tynwald, handing it over to members and saying, look, this is what I believe should happen. What do you think? And let's see if that has any effect. Because if you're living,
it's likely to be lively because we've already had a fairly good introduction to it between you and Mr. Cannan.
Well, I mean, I'm trying to be rational and calm about it. I mean, he's clearly in his interview with you showing himself to be the custodian of the Treasury, and I absolutely respect that, and it's correct. But to suggest somehow that I'm profligate in my ambitions is just, well, anybody who knows me knows that's absolutely ludicrous. What I absolutely do believe in is that we need to address fairness for the lowest paid. When you're on a low pay income, when you're earning less than the living wage, which I think he sort of brushed aside. I think somewhere in the interview, and correct me if I'm wrong, there was the word or the suggestion that, the so-called living wage. I mean, we all know that the living wage is a serious issue as far as Tynwald's concerned. I think it's £9.70 something, and it sits £1 or more above the minimum wage, and it's declared to be, on the part of Tynwald, the minimum wage that somebody should cope and live on. Now, out of that figure, in terms of tax and insurance, we are currently deducting nearly £2,000. So government's saying, look, this is the minimum that you should be expected to live on, the living wage. But by the way, we'll take near £2,000 off you. And I'm saying we need to look at this. We need to think about this. We need to ameliorate the difficulties for people on low pay. And it's a legitimate debate that we should have. And I'm very disappointed with Alf in sort of shooting from the hip and creating these arbitrary high numbers and then suggesting it's going to blow a hole in the National Insurance Fund, which is just not the case.